Unstructured learning, unsupervised learning gives us the opportunity to discover patterns in data that as humans we might not recognize. And so we have traditional models in our minds of what structured data looks like. We have traditional segments that we put our businesses into. But what AI is very good at is discovery.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I'm your host Sahil Lamba from the Engati team, and today we have a guest technology expert with us on the show. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform, available across 14 channels with 45,000 solutions created across 187 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by Inc.com, TechWorld, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guests. William Ammerman is a solution-focused senior executive advisor and thought leader with over 20 years of experience across publishing, online, and broadcast media industries. His broad industries of expertise include digital transformation, marketing and automation, AI, strategy, and growth. He's also an award-winning author of The Invisible Brand, Marketing in the Age of Automation, Big Data and Machine Learning, which won the Marketing and Sales Book of the Year 2019. Welcome to the show, William. We are so pleased to have you today.
It's nice to be with you.
But before we arrive into our interview with William, don't forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get the access to our content from around the world. Okay, I'll start with the first question. So this is something very relevant to today's context that we all are going through, the new media model. In order to remain relevant in the age of AI, what do you think the meltdown of the old models is accelerated because of the forced digital transformations?
Well, yeah, the traditional media model was largely driven by aggregating audiences and then selling that audience at a premium price. And the challenge that has emerged for media companies is that no longer are advertisers limited in where they can find an audience. They don't have to go to a specific publisher. They can find that audience programmatically on ad exchanges and buy ad exposures to that audience very cheaply. This drove down the prices that advertisers were able to command for specific niche audiences, and it changed the publishing model dramatically. Of course, we've seen the astronomical growth of companies like Google over the last 20 years. It's hard to imagine that 20 years ago search was in its infancy. It seems like such an important part of today's marketing mix, but you got to rewind the tapes back to 20 years ago. At the turn of the millennium, we were not yet into an age when marketing was totally focused on search and driven by market segmentation that was digital in nature. And so to see the change over 20 years has been dramatic, and more importantly, to try to picture 20 years into the future is even more dramatic. Now we have artificial intelligence, we have natural language processing, which is kind of a subset of AI in which we can actually talk to machines. And what's magical for marketers is that when you talk to people, you engage with them at a much deeper level. And also, people can spend money faster with their mouths than they can with their fingers. If you imagine somebody talking to a device, it's very easy for them to spend money. It's harder to actually type things in. And so these transformations are going to have a remarkable long-term impact. In terms of where we are today, 2020, one of the things that is kind of the elephant in the room is the impact of the COVID pandemic. We have seen a dramatic change in consumer behavior this year. Social is up big time. Podcasts are up. We see more engagement with OTT and smart television platforms. We see more engagement with voice-based interfaces and conversational AI. And we're seeing an increased attention spent to user-generated content. The TikTok phenomenon is a great example where this is just an emerging platform filled with user-generated content, and marketers are having to really rewrite their playbooks in order to take advantage of these new technologies. And I think what's behind the UGC phenomenon is another popular word this year, which is authenticity. People like to consume authentic content, and they view people that produce authentic content, UGC producers, as somewhat more real than kind of the canned, scripted, pre-produced, highly Hollywoodized TV commercials that they've been used to consuming over the past 5 decades. And when we think about authenticity, we have to understand that for marketers, you've got to find that balance between being really polished and really authentic. And sometimes marketers hit that, and sometimes they miss by wide margins. And so these new mediums and these new technologies that are emerging really pose real challenges. And marketers, the name of the game today is nimbleness. You've got to be on your toes. You've got to be flexible and adaptable to changing technology.
Correct, ma'am. So a few of the things that you mentioned are really, really fascinating to me. And my next question would be something similar: that how can then businesses unlearn what they already know and then transform their media models to suit the current business climates that you speak of?
Yeah, so we
That's
got a
like,
lot to unpack as an industry. You got marketing has been taught in business schools for decades, and people have very fixed models in their minds of what traditional marketing is. They've got market segmentation strategies, and they've got the customer decision journey, and customer lifetime value, and these formulas have been kind of pounded into their heads through MBA programs, through Harvard Business Review, and lots of places where people have learned they're going to have to rethink and kind of free themselves from some of the rigid structure because some of the old models are not working anymore, and some of the old the old joke about the buggy whip manufacturer going out of business when buggies were no longer in fashion. You've got to figure out, are you a buggy whip manufacturer, and how can you pivot your business to ensure that you're making products that survive into the future. To think about it in the terms of something very practical. Let's look at a small business owner. Let's take I have a dog sitting next to me. You can't quite see him, but he's sitting on the couch listening. And I take my pet to a boarding kennel when I travel on vacation. If you're a kennel owner, classic small business, you've got to understand that segmenting your audience in the digital age is important to your business. If you look at your cash register, you've got a lot of receipts in there, and there's a lot of data and a lot of information. And some of that data is, proprietary to your business. People share information with you about themselves, which is, valuable to your business. They tell you, when they're traveling, where they're going, how long they're going to be there, and more importantly, they tell you about their behaviors of their pets. They tell you what kind of dog food they eat. And when you start to segment all of this data, you can uncover opportunities for your business. If you look at your business and say, I sell pet food, and I offer grooming services, and I offer the ability for people to leave their pets with me, you might discover that there's a group of consumers that are visiting you to drop their pet off and go on vacation, but they're not using your grooming services. They're not using, they're not offering shampoo and clip the toenails and whatever else you do for grooming a dog. And the opportunity is tremendous to say to them, you're leaving town, your dog is going to be staying with us. Why don't you use our grooming service while you're out of town? And when you come back, Fido, your lovely dog, will be fresh and nicely groomed. And so learning to segment your data is important not just for IBM. It's not just important for Google. It's important for small businesses. And it's also important when you think about data privacy. Small businesses have, lots piles of information, and they've got to learn how to keep that data controlled and segmented. And so for businesses that are dealing with websites, they've got security concerns, they've got privacy issues. So these are all opportunities, but they're also risks, and businesses need to really be on top of this because the world has changed, and businesses are either going to adapt to that new environment or they're going to fail. And I would also say, and I'm not just plugging Engati, there are lots of businesses that can benefit from voice, that can benefit from natural language processing, that can benefit from better interfaces with consumers, where the chat bot, the voice interface, conversational AI, these are technologies that are not in the future. They're here now. And you can have a conversation with a machine today. And if your opportunity is, engaging with consumers on a routine basis, you need to recognize that, voice-based interfaces are easy to use for consumers. Consumers are driving in their cars and they're hands-free. They're sitting in their living rooms and they're talking to their television sets. People are already deeply involved in voice-based interfaces, and that's a consumer-facing edge of artificial intelligence that I think marketers really need to understand and embrace.
Right. Yeah, you're right, actually. Yeah, actually you answered half of my next question, so I'll confirm. I'll merge it into another one. So you've also spoken in the book, marketing in the age of automation, big data, and machine learning. But for certain businesses, especially startups, this technology isn't most accessible, and at a very small state. So how can startups combat this? Like, how can they use all these benefits?
Well, um, yesterday, or this week, we've seen one of the most stunning market entries into the public, public stock sale, the initial public offering of Airbnb. I want you to think about Airbnb as an example for a second. Airbnb was founded in 2008. Compare it to a major hospitality company like Marriott. Marriott's been around, I don't know, maybe 100 years. Marriott's value is now half of Airbnb as of yesterday. Marriott's, I don't know, 45, billion public valuation, and you've got Airbnb, which is only a 12-year-old company that's about double that in terms of their value. That's startling, and I want everybody to understand what happened. So in terms of marketing, whereas Marriott has to buy property and Marriott has to build 30-story buildings in prime locations in downtown districts in major cities worldwide, Airbnb thought small. They thought renting out somebody's apartment, renting out an extra bedroom in their house, renting their beach house while they were on vacation. And what I think they did that other small businesses can emulate is they got big by thinking small. Think about the segmentation that exists within Airbnb. You can segment your search opportunity by the type of dwelling. It can be a freestanding home. It can be beachfront property. It can be a single bedroom. It can be a condominium unit. It can be an apartment. You can go in and search by the number of bedrooms. You can search by the number of places that people can sleep, the number of occupants. You can search by location. You can look for amenities such as it has a swimming pool or it's pet friendly. In terms of segmentation, Airbnb has built something that is hyper segmented. They can deliver a beachfront house with a swimming pool that's pet friendly, that sleeps 6 people in North Carolina, in a 30-mile radius of Wilmington. I mean, it's extraordinary the level of segmentation. And that's what this technology offers. And so, again, going back to your question, for small businesses, they have to understand that you can think small to get big. Think small, think segmented, think hyper segmented, think niche. And that's, I think, the lesson that we can all learn from what Airbnb has done. You might also take a similar example with Uber or any number of these billion-dollar unicorns that have emerged over the past few years. You've got to take away from that a lesson, and that lesson is think in a kind of a niche way. Think small to get big, and leverage this digital technology to take what you're doing at a niche level and expand it at scale.
Yeah, William, that's actually beautiful. Even yeah, I think that has changed even how I would think about such a problem. And think small is something that yeah. So I'll go over to the next question. So how effective do you think AI has been in segmenting these markets that you talk about? And what are some of the effective types of B2B market segmentation strategies?
Well, of course, I don't mean to get too far into the technology, but unstructured learning, unsupervised learning gives us the opportunity to discover patterns in data that as humans we might not recognize. And so we have traditional models in our minds of what structured data looks like. We have traditional segments that we put our businesses into. But what AI is very good at is discovery. It's actually very good at going in and looking at data and applying structure to it in ways that a human might overlook. A human might look at let's take an example from the fashion industry. Let's say you've got a lot of inventory, and you might categorize that inventory along traditional kind of the way a human being might categorize it. A human being might categorize it as men's pants and men's shirts and women's uh, sweaters and women's skirts, and we're going to bring with the segmenting. We're going to bring with the way we do our marketing, our own biases, and kind of the categories that we think of as human beings. But AI, when assigned the problem, might look at something like a global supply chain problem that exists with wool, and it might see an opportunity to push cotton fabrics or a different type of fabric. So I'm not saying that's a real life example. I'm saying that a machine might discover a pattern that a human being wouldn't look for ordinarily. And that opportunity to leverage AI, to turn it loose, to look at unstructured data and apply structure, unsupervised learning to apply new categories and new segmentation. That's an opportunity that AI gives us that a human being isn't really capable of. We think we're pretty creative, and we are, but harnessing the mathematics behind unstructured, unsupervised learning to allow AI to make discoveries about your segmentation is that's a game changer. And of course, the number one place that we can all relate to that's being applied every day is Amazon. Amazon has built a literal empire, a distribution supply chain empire that is global, and it is seemingly immune to pandemics. In fact, it seems to be thriving during the pandemic, um, and it's going to be here with us for a very long time. And they are using AI every day to make discoveries about patterns of consumption and patterns of supply chain delivery, and they're aligning those patterns in ways that create massive profitability, and it's stunning. And so they of course are again thinking small down to the kind of nitty gritty details of it started off as a company that sold used books. Remember that. You know, who would have thought
Yeah.
25 years ago that the biggest company in the world was emerging out of this little online used bookseller? They thought small to get big. They looked at a niche opportunity, used books. I would never have dreamt, and I didn't. I missed it, right? I didn't invest in Amazon 25 years ago. It wasn't on my radar. I finally caught on and I finally invested, but not 25 years ago. I would never have dreamed that a used bookseller would become the largest company on the planet. It's just startling when you think about that transformation of that business and what it really harnesses, and that's the data behind consumer patterns and consumption patterns worldwide. It's tremendous.
Yeah, your example is very, very relevant. I see my Amazon purchase like have gone up definitely in the pandemic,
Right.
and it's actually just the opposite of what we were trying to do in our undergrad. Like in my undergrad, we were trying to do what an AI, if can AI do what a human could do. Like we would give it pictures for it to recognize what number this is basically, and now this is going beyond that. This that what we can't do, AI has to look for that. That's really very interesting. Yeah, one more question that I can't leave you without. What are the most common challenges do you see, for the current businesses in 2020 as well as 2021, the upcoming saving year that we're all waiting for?
Well, again, it's difficult to talk about 2020 without talking about the pandemic. So let's just address that. I think there have been some profound challenges, particularly for businesses in the restaurant space, businesses in the hospitality space, where there's been um, restrictions, limitations, shutdowns imposed on their businesses by the pandemic. And when we look at the businesses that have managed so far to survive, they have had to make investments in changing their business model. And in many cases, restaurants have expanded to outdoor seating to create, social distancing. They've changed their policies of, how servers deliver food, and everybody's wearing masks, of course. So, that's an example of a business that has been forced to either adapt or die. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of restaurants go out of business. Um, I think about the impact on other types of businesses. So I mentioned the hospitality segment, but we also have to look at businesses like Zoom that, when you're participating in a Zoom meeting, you have to recognize that you are part of a work from home phenomenon. You're talking to me in my home right now, and I'm working from home. And so the work from home phenomena has been a business opportunity, a boon for businesses that specialize in connecting people virtually, in businesses that cater to people working from home. We were just talking about Amazon. Of course, Amazon is delivering packages so that people don't have to go gather and socialize at the mall. So there are a lot of challenges, but the opportunities are also tremendous. I'm going to help you picture. I'm going to describe an ad. I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but I want you to picture this. So orthodontists, they put braces on people's teeth, and one of the um, anxieties that teenagers go through before they get their braces put on is it's going to be ugly. I'm going to be ugly. I don't want to be ugly at the time where I'm most self-conscious. I'm 15 years old, and I'm a teenager, and every teenager goes through this phase of being very, very self-conscious. And I was driving on the highway, and I saw a billboard, a big sign, and it was a young teenage girl wearing a mask. She had a mask on her face, and it said, "This is a great time to get braces."
Wow.
And I thought that was so funny, right?
That's brilliant. That's
It's a great time to get braces because you've got a mask on your face and nobody can see your braces. Now, I tell that story for a reason. That business, that orthodontist had really thought about their customer. They had segmented their audience. They had recognized that this is a time in which, kids are highly, concerned about their looks, about their appearance. They're also being forced to wear masks. And then they put two and two together and they said, hey, this is a great time to get braces. I just thought, this is marketing at its best. This is where some marketer looked at an opportunity, which is the pandemic, which is, we think of pandemics as a, tragedy, but here's a business that looked at that tragic situation and said, all right, I'm going to deal with this in a humorous way. I'm going to address my market segment based on their attitudes, their needs, their anxieties, and I'm going to deliver a positive marketing message with authenticity. We talked about authenticity before, in a way that actually, encourages people to use my business service. And there was no braces in the picture. There was no orthodontist in the picture. There were no teeth showing, and yet the message was profoundly funny, and I'm sure effective. What a great time to get braces. So I hope your audience takes away, I'm not really interested in plugging that orthodontist. I'm trying to help you think about your business and what you can be doing, with authenticity, with humor, to segment your audience and to address them in a way that actually helps you during this pandemic.
Thank you, and thank you for that beautiful example and that beautiful story. Any other sound bites that you would like to leave our audiences with?
Sound bites I'd like to leave you with.
Yeah. Or your book. Anything that you would
I
like to say?
sure. So from my book, The Invisible Brand, which is about marketing in the age of artificial intelligence, one of the things I talk about a lot is that we now have technology that operates on us psychologically. I call it psychotechnology, or you can even shorten that to psychotech. And what psychotech is really selling is the ability to change behavior. I hear people from Silicon Valley frequently saying that, if you don't know what the product is, you're the product. Well, you're not the product so much as the ability to change you is the product. And where we are today is that we have artificial intelligence, we have natural language processing and machine learning that are being used to change you psychologically. You're already being changed by this technology. And the challenge for marketers is to embrace this psychotech, to use it ethically, and to recognize that what you're really buying from these big tech companies is the ability to change your audience. And so what they're selling is behavioral change, and what you're buying is a change in behavior. You've got to think about what behaviors you want to change, and then you've got to leverage psychotechnology to enable those changes. Uh, so think about psychotechnology. Great book called The Invisible Brand if you're interested in learning more about it. And I encourage you again to use this technology ethically, because I think we're all sensitive to the potential for its abuse, and consumers are willing to be persuaded, but they don't want to be coerced, they don't want to be deceived, they don't want to be manipulated. So think in terms of persuasion rather than coercion and deception and manipulation. And I think you'll be on the right side of kind of the consumer attitudes towards artificial intelligence and these technologies.
Thank you, William. Thank you. You explained it right bang on at the with the correct thing that I could never. Thank you for giving us your time. Your insights were really valuable, and I think our audience will are going to enjoy this interview. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be back with new episodes with a brand new expert soon, so stay tuned, and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you.